Okay.
Morning, Caitlin. Good to see you back.
Hello.
How you doing today?
Hey, I fixed my video. I was blank a minute ago.
Very good. Also, welcome, Cindy. Thank you for joining us on your first governance meeting. Very happy to have you.
I'm so excited.
That's the kind of enthusiasm we hate in governance.
Fair enough.
And Taylor, not sure we've formally met yet, but seen lots of your work, and maybe we have. I'm sorry, but how you doing today?
I'm good, thank you. How are you? And I don't believe we've met in person, but
Okay.
Hopefully soon.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for all your hard work, and like I said, I've been looking over at a lot of the stuff and quite happy, so that's great.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it.
So we will call to order this meeting of the Governance Committee here July 29th at 8 a.m. The first order of business will be to accept the agenda. So has everyone had a chance to look at the agenda today?
I'm working on it.
Very good. Cindy, do you accept our agenda? Would you like to make any additions or amendments?
Nope, we're good. Thank you. I just wanted to number 8 there, the communication stuff. That's where I can speak to my piece. So
Absolutely, yeah. We got some notes on that for you as well. Had a chance to look over that that action plan. Looks good. Any conflicts with anyone?
So don't we need a seconder to accept the motion?
Yes.
I never got the minutes that were supposedly sent to me.
I didn't send any minutes.
Oh, okay. Or not
Nothing.
minutes, sorry, agenda. Sorry, how was
No, actually, I sent it to you this morning when Cindy mentioned it. So if you check your email, you should have it.
We use the Jostin Legal Services one. Is that the right email for you?
I don't have immediate access to Jostin Legal admin email.
So what email?
Usually they send it to me, but they haven't done that yet.
Very good.
They're behind the times.
Yeah.
So what email should I send it to? And I can send it to you right now.
Send it to caitlin.ewell@outlook.com. It's probably the easiest way to get it to me.
Okay. So if you just give me a second.
Yeah.
And I can read out the agenda items because they are not extensive. So
Perfect.
Agenda item number 1, welcome and call to order. Passed that already, so no chance to object to that. Number 2 is open of the general meeting. 3 is acceptance of the agenda. 4, declaration of conflicts. 5 is we're going to be looking at some new committee members and thinking about accepting some applications we received for some committee members on different committees.
Thank you.
Number 6, non-voting member status. 7, report of the integrity commissioner. 8 is communications guideline. 9 is capstone projects update. 10 is new business, and 11 is adjourning. Sounds okay?
That's good to me.
Are you a yes on the acceptance of the agenda?
I can accept the agenda.
Excellent. So we're carried. Declaration of conflicts. Anyone have any conflicts with those agenda items? No conflicts. Excellent. And yeah, so the first order of substantial business, Angela has sent to me 4 committee applications for various committees. Obviously, it's the popular committees, nothing for governance, but a lot for marketing, events. Those are, I think, the 2 main ones, and some others as well. Everything looks good, but I'm not sure, and I will put this to you guys for discussion, that I want to dictate other committees' members. So I'm not sure, Angela, if you have any guidance on our policies and procedures as far as yay or nay. I think maybe they pass through the governance committee first, just to make sure there's no legal issues or obvious conflicts or anything like that. But once they pass through the governance committee, I would suggest that the proper procedure would be just to send the applications to the appropriate committees who they're applying for, and then have the committee have final say on whether they're accepted or not. So what do you guys think?
That's what I thought the process was going to be, is that it goes to the governance, they say yes, everything's fine, and then the actual committee would decide whether or not to accept them.
Okay.
The only thing I would add in that process is just to make sure we acknowledge the receipt of the application on some end.
Oh, they have got it.
that we no, but that we formally acknowledge the applicant, like say, thank you so much for your application, blah blah blah. This is the process. Just
Yeah.
send the communications in, because if it's going to governance and then the committee chooses not to pick that member, that there's clear communication to respond to that application appropriately. That's the only thing I would flag as far as process goes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
going forward, we'll make sure that that's a standard email that goes out to them. But they all do know that they have to have the applications to us prior to even being able to permanently sit on a committee.
Yeah.
So even that standard response, if it just says we've received your application, we'll be in touch if we choose to accept you further in the process, like an easy out, so that we don't necessarily have to contact them to say no, we've decided we don't want you on our committee. But yeah, something like that to streamline that, to make sure we cover off the communications piece.
But also to let them know that it could take, a month and a half to 2 months, depending on how frequently a committee is meeting or the committees are meeting, right?
Yeah, and is that something you want me to draft for communications, like an automatic response for thank you?
I think Taylor can draft that. And then
Sounds good.
if you want, we can vet it through you, but I'm sure that Taylor can draft something for us.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay, so for this meeting, I'm not sure that we've gone, I didn't direct you, Angela, to circulate the committee or the applications. You guys didn't receive those, right? No.
No.
So there are 4 different applications. I mean, they're pretty standard. Like I said, I'm not sure at what point governance committee would reject somebody's application before sending it to the appropriate committee for them to decide. Other than should they, have been convicted of a serious crime or have some sort of obvious conflict with the BIA that we need to discuss and say. But I think process-wise, it would be pretty inappropriate for us to be like, nah, I don't like that person. They're not getting through to the appropriate committee. That's really a committee decision, I would say. So having vetted the applications, I mean, Angela, are you able to quickly send them to these guys and you could have a quick look? Again, I'm not sure how appropriate it would be. I would really just motion to send the applicants to the appropriate committees upon your guys' quick review of them. Nobody has said yes to criminal record. They've got resumes. The committee members, to be a member of a committee as per the bylaws, there's no real formal requirements. You have to really just apply. You don't have to be a resident of downtown or be a business member downtown. You can just be a resident, just be an irregular person that wants to volunteer. There's no restrictions on that. So yeah, so we'll have those sent around. You guys can take a quick look, and perhaps we'll circle back to that towards the end of the meeting if we have time. So we'll put a pin in that one for now. Non-voting member status. So at the last general meeting, a couple whiles ago, I was tasked, and Caitlin, just to get you up to speed on this, we had 2 representatives, one from Durham College and one from UOIT, or not UOIT, sorry, Trent University. Neither of those institutions have an actual campus or footprint really in the downtown, but they have a large impact on our downtown because a lot of students go into the downtown who are attending these universities, and they are kind of active in Oshawa and in the downtown core to an extent as well. So both of those organizations put in a request to have members sit on the board at the AGM meeting. The board was happy to receive that. They're really good resources for us to connect in with the student population and also to connect in with a lot of their different skill sets and expertise. And they've been working pretty hard for the board. Unfortunately, the board does, and we voted them in as non-voting members. So we said, okay, you don't have a footprint in downtown. Wouldn't be fair to add you at a full seat on the table as a voting member, but we can put you in as ex officio non-voting member status. Come to the board, participate. We'll hear your say, but you just don't get to vote. And then we heard back that we weren't allowed to do that. So our bylaw is dictated by the city. The city rules us with an iron fist. So we don't have a lot of power as to the composition of our board, at least. So just looking at different ways of how we can approach that and remedy that. had a conversation with the city clerk about this and saying, okay, well, what can we do? We want to put these people on in some form or capacity. Right now, we voted them in as ex officio. She advised that, you know, her what we have to do is bring a motion to the city for the city to amend our bylaw to allow for ex officio members, or to allow for particularly a representative from Durham College and Trenton University. She stated that that would be ex officio status would just cause problems in the future. Although I believe that's just an opinion based on granted her pretty good tenure and experience in governance and composition of boards and things of that nature. So I think we would want to take her caution and take her advice and kind of listen to it. But just wanted to give you guys an update on that. I'll be reporting to the board back on that as well. But yeah, she was saying to have those people there, we'd have to make a motion to the city to have the bylaw amended before they could officially sit. I did ask them, I said, well, she says, you're not allowed to do ex officio. I said, well, we have 2 city representatives that sit on the board, and they're not in our bylaw. No, there's nothing in the bylaw that says 2 representatives from city council are going to be sitting on the board, and they don't vote. So it's pretty similar to that is what I would be expecting. And she kind of came back and said, well, that's you know, they're advisors for the city, and they shouldn't be discussing or chiming in on any matters. They're only there to advise as to city policy and be the voice of the city council when they're at the meetings, which, I mean, we push them for more than that. Certainly they don't vote, but their input and guidance as far as city policy is there, and we do push them for a little bit more than that. So that was an interesting thought I had about that. So any questions or comments on that?
Personally, I know I was opposed to having them as ex officio as well for the same reasons, because they're welcome to come to every board meeting. I believe they're open and they can sit on committees, but I do think it's just opening the doors to a lot of, like, why don't we have representatives from Tim Hortons and Lake Ridge and like all kinds of different other people who have vested interest in downtown. I think when because I'm optimistic, hopefully they will take up space downtown, then they become members of the BIA, and then it's a good fit for them. But I just do feel it's kind of that gray zone once we start, you know, allowing outsiders in. So I do respect the fact that they do have students in the Oshawa area that probably come downtown, but I do kind of abide by the policy that, well, they're technically not paying members of the BIA, and that the actual board seats are saved for those members, but they're more than welcome and invited, and we really appreciate their contributions at open board meetings and on committees. It's kind of...
Yeah, the only difficulty in that is that you're not allowed to speak at an open board meeting unless you're part of the board. So they could come, but they couldn't say anything unless they took a delegation. So that's kind of the governance around that. So, but I appreciate your point.
But I don't know, like, I know, have we had, because I mean, like you said, they could speak as delegation, but their reports regularly. I'm just trying to think if there's anything.
Yeah, so if we were having a discussion, let's say, about an objective or a program we were going to do, and we wanted to consult them on that, we would have to know ahead of time and then invite them to bring a delegation on that. We couldn't just turn to them if they're in the room and say, oh, what do you guys think about this? It's not really appropriate to do that, because at that point, like you said, anyone that was in the room would have to be able to chime in or give their input on anything that the board was speaking about. So yeah, it's a little bit difficult. Like I said, I would love to have them on the board. I think they're a great resource for us. They're very well connected, and I think they only are going to bring a good extra steam to the board for as far as what they can do and the resources they can tap into and their own just personal capacities of working. But yeah, you're right. They can be committee members. That's great. But yeah, there's just a difficulty. It's either, I think it's really kind of all or nothing. They either have a seat at the table and then they can discuss everything with the board and have their input, and we can assign them projects and tasks and things to do and take on, or they don't. So. And I don't know how city council would vote anyways. I mean, they, you know, that would be a whole other bag of worms of how we advocate that if we were to bring it forward. So
yeah.
just going to lay out those options for the board tomorrow, and I'll let you guys know. I'll let you know, Kayla, next meeting what the board decides to do. I think we'll probably have a little bit of discussion around that, and hopefully can make a decision whether we want to bring that forward to City Council, and I can start working on whatever it would be. I think a motion, or it's legal terms. I can only think of motions right now. I was in court yesterday, but whatever it is, I got to bring to City Council to make the formal request that they approve 2 new members as either ex officio or full status. Like I said, the city clerk was pretty strongly against ex officio, and I don't know that the City Council would approve that either, because I mean it's going to go through her and she's going to give that report, but we'll see. We'll see what the board wants to do. So that's it for non-voting member status. Have you guys had a chance, as I've diatribed and word vomited on you, to take a look at any of the committee member applications? Did you receive those? Maybe you can scroll through as I word vomit on you at the next item, which is report of the Integrity Commissioner. So again, the board tasked me with taking a look at this report, which was let's see here, I've got my detailed notes because it was like 150 pages. So yeah, on February 26th, the City of Oshawa released a public report on procedures, forms, and updated code of conduct related to the Integrity Commissioner services. So it was kind of titled the report of the Integrity Commissioner. It's not, it's a report of the City Commissioner on having an Integrity Commissioner appointed. So this action, so we have the City of Oshawa has an Integrity Commissioner for City Council and the BIA board specifically. So I don't know why we're specifically named and none of the other local type boards are included in that, but take that from what you will. Anyways, Council requested this report on March 18th, 2019, and formally the reason for the request was there was a response to the amendments in the Municipal Act. So I guess some amendments to the Municipal Act changed the requirements for the Code of Conduct and how the City Council operates and governs itself. So there's 3 recommendations that came out of that report. One is that be a procedure and form for members and council and directors of the BIA to access Integrity Commissioner advisory services. So that would be the ability of for as it relates to us, of the BIA, to reach out to the Integrity Commissioner and get advice as to whether our policies and procedures or something that where our code of conduct is in line with what's required by the Municipal Act. The second is to create a complaint procedure and form to the public to submit contraventions of the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act, either by council and directors of the BIA. As well as code of conduct violations. So if they think that we're offside the code of conduct or we're offside the Conflict of Interest Act, they can make a formal report to the Integrity Commissioner, who will then decide whether to open an investigation and then make an investigation. The Integrity Commissioner has some authority to levy some punishments, but ultimately the punishments that the Integrity Commissioner has is like withholding pay. So cry me a river, we're volunteers. Recommend amendments. The third recommendation was to recommend amendments to the Council Code of Conduct. So they've changed the City Code of Conduct. They've also included us in their Code of Conduct. So the BIA formally falls under the Code of Conduct that the city has, and we have to abide by their Code of Conduct. Nothing crazy in their Code of Conduct, like standard stuff. You know, I don't think we're in. You know, we've all got to change our behavior all of a sudden, although maybe certainly some things as in life fall outside of the code of conduct as the general conversations go, and different members of different things. So anyways, that's the long and short of it. I have a little bit more details to go into, but the other important note is if we're going to access the Integrity Commissioner for their support, it'll come at a bill of $239 an hour for all of their work. So we won't be doing that because we don't have any money, but the city certainly has a great option for it. I think essentially we're put up against it because they want to be able to have an avenue for people to make a formal complaint against us that's investigated if it's valid outside of the city, so it's an appearance of impartiality. I think it's fine. I don't really have any major worries about it. Like I said, the punishments are a reprimand and suspension of pay for up to 90 days. Has some other implications for some comments that some city councilors made against the BIA that I think would definitely be in violation of the code of conduct, and may want to consider those avenues for having that dealt with in an impartial way. But other than that, I'm not too worried. Any questions on that? Very good. So that was a real long one. So now have you guys had a chance to look at the new committee members?
My first question is, there's some applications that have multiple committees identified. Are we taking, is it kind of like one committee only, or can they be represented on multiple committees? Like,
I would be happy if they want to spread out and join all kinds of different committees. That's great. I think we need the manpower right now. So if someone's an eager beaver and wants to sign up for a few different committees, and that's fine with me. What do you think about that, Caitlin?
I have no problem with that.
We
Yeah, what do you-
already,
Sounds like a good idea.
we already have at least one person that's on 2 different committees.
Do you have any concerns about that, Cindy, or would you want to limit at all? Or
no, I think for me, just, you know, if individual resources, if they're not, I don't know, putting your,
oh, just say it.
I'm trying to choose my words carefully. No, okay, so two trains of thought came up, and one was like, would somebody be able to participate more fully and robustly in one committee as opposed to dabbling in a little bit superficially in multiple committees? And also, if a member tends to be maybe problematic or over participatory, then they're on multiple committees to have to manage. Not that, but.
I wonder if we have that kind of brings up, should we bring in a process to be able to let committee members go respectfully,
Yeah.
as the committee as a whole has that opportunity, and what that would look like is probably something we would have to dictate as a governance board. So that's the
Yeah, and I
that's
think the easiest way to do that is to put a term on it, like a 1-year term or something up for renewal. And again, like for me personally, I would rather see depth of a committee member as opposed to someone who can say they sat on 8 committees and, you know, spoke to 2 words but didn't take on any tasks because they were on so many committees. I mean, those are my only concerns, but I'm not trying to regulate everybody. Everyone knows what, you know, their abilities are, but those were just 2 concerns that came to mind.
Yeah, those are good concerns. I'm not sure how we would vet them. I think maybe we could suggest the committee members do an interview.
Yeah, there's also with the volunteer policy. Because they're volunteers, we would consider them under that. And there is a dismissal portion in that policy. Most people that are applying for more than one committee, one is their expertise and the other is their interest. So, you know, like if you look at Melissa, who's one of the new ones, her interests are marketing, or well, actually her interest is events, but her schooling is in marketing. So she has lived downtown, participated in many events. So she really is community minded and wants to assist with events. But she also has taken a whole bunch of marketing courses up at DC and wants to be able to help us out with that.
Just a note, I think if we're going to talk about, sorry, Angela, specific
Yep.
people and their qualifications, we should go on camera on that.
Sorry.
If we're going to make this a public
Yes.
meeting. But that's okay. So yeah, in the future, like I said, if we're going to speak specifically about somebody, then we'll just make sure that we go into off recording for that to do it in camera. Yeah, I think so too, and I think again, I really don't want to be the one dictating who sits on what committee. I think it's the committee decision, and I think the committee gets the application, and then maybe some guidance that if they're not starved for volunteers and they they want to be a little bit more selective, then an interview process be had, or the person be invited to come to a committee, give their pitch, have the committee members ask them questions, and give them some possible opportunities and see what their level of engagement might be, and if they're going to be a good fit, and then make their decision after that.
Yeah, that makes good sense. And I would also like to add in, I think maybe we could just offer a 1-year term. It's just a really easy out to say, you know, we need new members in, fresh blood, blah, blah, blah. And it saves the awkwardness of, I mean, we have the backup volunteer policy that Angela referenced for, you know, situations that necessitate that. But the 1-year term, I think, is just a really nice way to transition people through.
I agree. Absolutely. Yeah.
So we also did state that the applications have to be renewed every year.
Oh, perfect.
That's actually really nice, because then people get to continually update their resumes, which is something I wish I was forced to do. Because if you ever sat down and then 10 years later have to do a resume again, you're like, oh man, I'll do this. But okay, so I think that's good for the committee applications. I think that also stresses the need at our next meeting to. And this kind of sits under the capstone projects and new business, but we've got we'll talk about that more, but we've got a lot of guidelines and procedures that the Taylor and the capstone students, Roger and everyone has been working on. So we need to review those and formally approve them and put them into our governance for us, and that will be a good opportunity to make sure that all these terms and things are in there. So that's great. So motion on number 5 then would be to have Angela send the committee applications to the committees in which the volunteers have applied, together with a note that reminding them that they're, should discuss and vote on acceptance, and they're welcome to invite these individuals to a meeting for a interview with the committee. Cindy?
Yep, I'll move that.
Caitlin?
I'll agree to that. I'll second that.
Excellent. Okay, so carried. Angela, does that make sense? Angela?
We've lost her.
Oh.
Sorry, I go on mute so you don't hear the background noise. Yeah, no, that's fine. And I was writing as I'm answering you. So.
I expected as much, no problem. All right, so that brings us all the way down. We're moving along very efficiently to Cindy's star moment, the moment she's all been waiting for, the communications guidelines. So take it away, Cindy.
Oh, I'm going to take it away.
Absolutely. I'm not going to take credit for all your hard work. I mean, I've got my comments, but.
All right. So, Caitlin, just to fill you in. So my name is Cindy Malachowski. I'm chair of the Community Development Committee. And in the interim, since we don't have an ED, we recognize some areas that we needed to improve upon, and communications was one of those areas. So even though I have absolutely no background and no experience, I volunteered to try to help with that. So Taylor and Angela and Roger have been like instrumental, and they pretty much do everything. So we just kind of reviewed our internal and external communications. We looked at things that we could have had in place that maybe would have mitigated some issues earlier on. We looked at some best practices and kind of the direction we wanted to go. So we're at the initial stages of kind of revamping things. So we also slide under the umbrella of communications and marketing. So that's kind of where we do our work and most of our brainstorming under that committee. But we quickly realized right now in the process, it's really overlapping with governance, because some of the internal things we really needed to fix around communications revolved around evaluations, kind of check-ins with staff, volunteers, and students. So I'm just going to pull up, we have an action plan. So what we wanted to bring forward to governance for discussion was a board, starting with our board and a board meeting evaluation. So we did a draft SurveyMonkey survey to just evaluate the board process. So that speaks to whether or not board members feel it was an inclusive process, it was participatory, they had the materials in advance to review it, and just to get a gauge on whether the actual board feels it's functioning well, or if there are certain board members who don't feel they have opportunity to speak or it's not fair. So that evaluation would be distributed through SurveyMonkey at the end of each monthly board meeting. The data is anonymous, it's collated, and then it would go, well, and this is kind of what we would have to figure out. It would go to governance in some form. Governance would review it and say, okay, we had, you know, this positive feedback or this constructive feedback, and we're scoring low in this area, kind of what are we going to do with it? And then the governance committee would just at the next board meeting say, our board surveys came back, we scored high in this, we might want to keep an eye on that. And just to give the board that kind of ongoing feedback. So the only issue I think is with workload. The survey is no problem once it's done. It's on SurveyMonkey. It's a quick email out to the board. It would be kind of summarizing that information to feed back to the board. I don't know whose plate that would fall on or how that would look. And I guess essentially if that's something that governance feels they would like to move forward with in general. So that's the first.
Would that be for every board meeting?
Yes, yeah. So once a month. And then it would also speak to any, well, I guess governance training would be separate, but anything that came up at a board meeting that was extenuating or different, or anything we would choose to add into a board meeting, if there was any ongoing skill development or any piece that would give the board opportunity to say, yeah, that was really good, or we need more of that, or we would like to see more of this. It's just kind of an anonymous gauge and ongoing tool to monitor board functions.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, so I guess those survey results would be, so SurveyMonkey works so you have a username and password. So we just have a set username and password. Somebody would have that username and password, get an email from SurveyMonkey about whatever the results of the surveys were, have everyone complete them. So I guess we'd have to motion that the board members all agree that after attending within 3 days of attending a board meeting that the survey be completed. We'd have to send out an email reminding them to complete the survey with a link. And it's like 10 questions, right? It's not a...
Yeah, and it doesn't necessarily have to be SurveyMonkey. That's the one I was familiar with and it was free. So that's the one I used. But I think Taylor, you guys used a different platform. One that I was just like, man, I'm just comfortable with SurveyMonkey. But I mean, the questions are really simple and they can be transferred. It's just a Likert scale. So it's not anything.
What do you think about that, Taylor? Do you have any suggestions? I don't know any survey things. I only know SurveyMonkey, so that's really the only option I would see. But
yeah, I'm pretty sure we do use SurveyMonkey as well. I can't remember off the top of my head. SurveyMonkey or Survey Hero, and they're almost identical.
Nah, Survey Hero. So I guess, Michael, the only thing for the committee to consider is who would summarize that data or who would send out the link. I mean, I'm just very cautious. I know Taylor and Angela always have so much going on, and I want to be respectful of their time. So I don't know how to, because there's a number of things that'll come up that require little delegations. I don't know how best to manage that.
yeah, and what do you think? I'll put you in an awkward situation, but I would think that having an actual board member do it might be an idea, like would be a conflict, because I would have my own ideas, you would have your own ideas, and I might analyze the data in a certain way that reflects more or emphasize when I report back to the board more on one piece rather than another that I felt was more important or that I wanted to see from the data. So having a third party that was a little bit more removed might do that. And at the same time, we have to think about board privacy. So is it okay to have a third party to look at that data? Data is sensitive. It'll be an anonymous survey, so there wouldn't be any specific indicators of who was. It'd be more general and objective. I mean, what do you think?
That's something the board should agree to, having a single unbiased third party look at their opinion on the subject, see if anybody has an issue with that concept.
Yeah, and I wonder if there's someone in this room who might be a third-party unbiased person to take that task on. Yeah, I mean, if we bring it to the board and they approve this idea and they approve having you review that, would you be willing to take a stab at that, Caitlin, once a month and kind of just do a quick report into the governance committee about the survey results and what you've seen about it and recommendations?
I'm sure I can do something.
Great. So what do you think about that, Cindy? I mean, like I said, I didn't really want to raise it to put you in an awkward situation, but sometimes we're there, and I always appreciate that you you have a full spectrum view, and I want to hear any concerns that you have about this before we bring it up there, if you have any at all.
Me?
Yeah. Any concerns with having Caitlin review the data? Like I said, it's awkward because we're all in the room together, but like I said, you bring perspectives that I haven't thought about before, so I always appreciate that.
No, the questions are they're really objective. They're not really personal. There's space for comments where if people want to, delve into more subjective content. But really it's pretty benign. Like I have and again, and with some of the other information we'll bring forward, it's just that kind of it's that thermometer or barometer where we can tell, okay, something's not right or something's off. We need to delve more into it or go into more detail to find out what's really going on. But it's kind of like superficial stuff. And I think just giving the board that feedback once, and I mean, there will be an adjustment phase too, once people recognize that, okay, it's not threatening or, it's not anything too arduous to participate in, it'll be fine. And I really appreciate Caitlin, if you're willing to take that on. And it's a quick summary, like SurveyMonkey kind of summarizes everything for you basically, and to just give that report back. I don't know, Michael, if I spoke to what your question was.
Yeah, that was great.
Stop talking already.
Okay, so that's good on the first communications part.
So actually, I have because it was a question about how to send it out. The link could be sent out with the board package, and then we could just set it as because the board meetings are on Thursdays. We could send a reminder out on the following Monday, just to the entire board saying, if you haven't had a chance, please don't forget to fill that out. So I don't think that would be that difficult of a thing for Taylor and I could do each month.
Perfect.
And when we propose this at the board meeting, Michael, are you going to speak to this as committee chair?
I can. If you would like to speak to it, you can. But
No. I just.
I will take the reins on that and propose this to the board for sure.
Okay, thank you. Oh, yes. Okay, so next item. Yeah, we'll move forward. Okay, so that was the board communications. The next one for governance was, okay, so feedback for staff, students, and volunteers. So again, we crafted another survey on SurveyMonkey. The reason why we did this, I think we proposed it to be quarterly. This was, again, more of like a barometer to check in on staff, students, and volunteers to pick up on how things were going, how communication was going. Again, it's really superficial. It would just give us an idea, okay, something might not be right. We need to look into this further. We thought quarterly just to kind of catch things sooner rather than later, and it becomes a little bit more routine. And just in light of some of the potential communications issues we had, it's non-threatening because staff, students, and volunteers are all lumped together and it is anonymous. So we had a preamble that we would send out in the quarterly email, and it would read, the BIA strives to provide a healthy and productive work environment for our staff, students, and volunteers. We invite you to complete this short feedback survey. Your insights are essential in letting us know what we are doing well and what we can improve upon. All responses are anonymous and will be provided directly to the BIA Governance Committee for review. Thank you for taking the time to provide your input. So again, it's just that kind of quick check-in, make sure all staff, students, and volunteers feel supported and are happy, and we can catch anything that could potentially lead to bigger problems before it gets too late.
Good. I had two questions or comments on this survey. So one was question one, the wording was the BIA inspires continuous growth and learning in others. Should that be like is that more like we're asking them if they inspire continuous growth and learning in themselves?
Sorry,
Or-
what was that? What was that wording?
So
Was
the-
that in the survey?
Yeah, the staff feedback question one was the BIA inspires continuous growth and learning in others. But I'm not sure if it's about what they do for other people. It's about what are you doing for me. So I wasn't sure what that meant, because you could take that as like, oh, I just thought that was a little bit of a vague question. I didn't want to put people on the spot, so maybe I thought that's why it was worded. But I thought it would be more personal. So the BIA inspires continuous growth and learning in myself or me, or I feel that the BIA has assisted me in continuous growth, or something more personalized to the actual person filling out the survey. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, no, that's great feedback. And I think that was just an oversight on semantics. It's when you know what you want to say, but it doesn't come out right. So that's really good feedback. Yeah, we can change that for sure.
Okay. And then the question two was, I think it's saying like the BIA, I should have wrote out the question instead of doing that. Hold on, let me just go into the survey real quick. Yeah, it was focused on the BIA, and I think I understood that we really didn't want to make people feel like they were calling somebody out or put them on the spot, but at the same time,
Oh, and just for everybody else's reference, question number two is the BIA is supportive and promotes a positive work culture.
yeah. So yeah, it would be. My issue with that was we're kind of discussing the BIA as if it's a living being. I guess it's wide because you want to say, like, in general, the organization as a whole and all the members in it are doing that. But I'm wondering if the intent of that was more to speak to whoever the manager of that person is, or whoever has control over that person. Not control, but whoever's directing that person is providing that support and positive work culture. So that was just a question I had about that.
Yeah, I think we kind of left the wording high level and very broad. Again, more of like a barometer check. So if everybody is saying we're ranking really low on a positive work culture, then it's up to the board or the chair to go in and say, okay, where is this happening? Why is it happening? What are they referencing? And to dig a little bit deeper. But in consultation, we felt leaving the wording somewhat open made the staff, students, and volunteers a little more comfortable in responding, because they didn't have to get into specifics that they might be worried it might trace back to them, or because if we said specifically, my manager is supportive, then it's kind of really calling them out on the spot, and people would be less likely to respond more honestly.
Okay.
Whereas if we kept it broader, it's just indicative of something not being right that we would have to go investigate further. So that was the rationale. I don't know if it's right, but I'm open for discussion for sure, because I see your point.
Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead.
Is there a way where people can submit an anonymous issue or complaint or comment to the BIA in any way? So if someone, say there's a small group of, say, some of the students having issue with some sort of a manager, if they can send something to say, we're having a problem, we don't want to make a scene, but there might be an issue if things continue on the way they are, without feeling there's extra pressure that now they have to deal with this problem themselves. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I mean, I think in consultation and just, you know, in work experience, people are really afraid to step forward with a specific complaint against somebody because the process might not be transparent, or they might not be sure where the information is going. So Angela, you can confirm, but I don't think we have like an internal complaints process. And just because we're so small, I get the impression people would be really reluctant to come forward. So Angela and Taylor, maybe you two can speak a little bit more to that from your personal experience and perspective.
Yeah, there isn't really a formal process other than, you know, especially in terms of volunteers, they just wouldn't show up anymore, right? And that's a clear indication if you've got volunteers that have been around for quite a while and they decide, yep, no, I'm done. And without saying anything, they just stop. Staff and students, it's a little harder, right? Because it is such a small office. And, there should be a clear line of who to go to, but, if you're the person directly above you is the one causing the problem, in our policies and procedures, it actually states that the staff don't have a clear line to the board, right? So any of the other staff are supposed to go to whoever is reporting to the board. So there really isn't right now a mechanism to be able to, if any of the staff feels that there's some sort of issue, to be able to identify that to the board.
Yeah. And in a way, rightfully so, because I don't think the board, not that it would happen because our organization's not big enough, but the board wouldn't want to be inundated with staff and volunteer complaints directly. Like, it should be vetted through, I would think, like governance. Sorry, Michael. but there should be, some gatekeepers in place so that, it's tricky. So
Yeah, like I'm not saying we should get all these emails and complaints from everybody. I don't want that either. Because people tend to be a bit afraid to speak up. I like the idea of them having some way to do so. If, like you said, it's the one they're supposed to be reporting to is the problem, then they suddenly feel trapped, and then you can start losing people that have been, say, a good help for a while now. They've been doing good work, and suddenly I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah. And I think Angela's comment about the volunteers just not showing up anymore speaks to the value of having a quick quarterly survey check-in. Because if they're becoming disgruntled or thinking of quitting, we can maybe catch it sooner rather than later and make adjustments. And at this survey, I'm pretty sure Angela and Taylor did review it. From their perspective, I think I'm going to speak on their behalf, because especially Taylor, you're being very quiet. but I think they felt safe with the questions, in that it would catch blips that we could investigate further if needed.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just didn't speak up that last time because Angela pretty much said everything that I wanted to say. So yeah, I definitely felt that it's beneficial and captured kind of a good overview and high level of, of questions. Like, they weren't too specific. I didn't feel uncomfortable answering them. So it was good.
Yeah, I think it's worth noodling over a complaint line, because like you said, people might not feel comfortable about it, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't give them the opportunity to go to someone other than their direct report to express a concern. Particularly,
Safety on our side.
Yeah,
we are now offering that option. If it's not used, it's there.
Yeah, and they have, like, for serious complaints where there's code of conduct been breached, or sexual harassment, or something that goes to another level. I mean, that's something that gets kicked up to the integrity commissioner at this point. So they have someone that's completely disassociated from the organization that they're able to make that complaint to. But we should probably make that clear as well, and then that's going to kind of come out in the board meeting. But that's probably something that should make its way into our policy and procedures. Is here's the code of conduct, and you can have the following opportunities to voice your concerns. For something you don't want to do whatever for, you can speak to this person. My top of my head would be the board member, the committee chair for whatever the volunteer is on. So if you're a volunteer in the marketing committee, I don't know why you would submit a complaint to me, someone you have no idea, you don't know about, unless it's about the committee chair, the board director. But in that point, then you could go to the staff member at the BIA to launch that complaint, because you would probably be more comfortable with that. So if you're complaining about a board member, you would do it to your direct report. If you're complaining about your direct report, you would do it to the board member. And I think that would be best dealt with at the committee level, where they can understand the dynamics a little bit more and chime in. Like, if I just get an email from somebody, to get to the bottom of it, I'd have to launch a full investigation and try to understand the personalities and what's occurred before I could propose a solution. I don't think that would be.
Yeah. Hey, I have a question with that, Michael.
Sure.
So what happens if the chair of the committee and another volunteer basically take over that committee and treat everyone else like what they say doesn't matter. It's basically their way or the highway. So then you've got staff who is being directed by the chair, which of course is a board member, right? So, and if they're powerless to do anything and the chair and the other person are causing issues, if it's going to that committee, that's not going to be resolved. You're just going to lose people.
Right, but that would be something that would be brought out in the survey, because that's culture problems. Like, as the chair of governance, for example, I'm not going to be able to step into a committee because I'm a board member too, and I'm not gonna go to I'm just throwing this out there, the marketing committee, and say, listen, you've got a toxic culture in your committee. They're gonna say, you don't sit on my committee. What do you know about any of this? And I agree that that's a problem that would need to be addressed, but I think we would have to bring more evidence to it for those types of issues where it's a takeover or a coup between two people who are just running the committee without any input from the wider volunteers or aren't running it efficiently, because that's a culture thing that would need to shift. And to shift culture, I think I wouldn't just be able to go in and say, listen, I'm chair of governance and you need to get in line and start hearing from your other volunteer members, because they're likely not going to perceive that that's what they're doing. Or if they do perceive that that's what they're doing, they're not going to change because I tell them to. That would be my feedback on that. But if we can bring them survey results and say, look, this is clear. This is what's happening in your committee. And whether you think it's true or not, this is what the majority of people are feeling. And you're going to lose members and you're not going to have the manpower to run what you need to run. So how do we fix this together? And how do we address this as a major issue? So, and you said we're going to do these surveys quarterly?
Yeah.
So, I mean, that does bring 3-month gap times, but that's only 3 meetings of a committee. And if it's people just taking over the committee, I'm assuming that would take over a period of time. Again, I don't sit on these committees, so you would have a better idea, Angela, because you see all of them, and that's, I don't want to downplay your concern because you're on the ground with that stuff, so you would see it happening as a solution base. Sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
Is, that the surveys go to the committees. I think that they should all go to like governance. And so that governance can see it, because you're going to also get more honest responses if it's going to governance versus, to the staff or to the chair of each committee, just because of history with some of the committees over the years while I've been here. There have been some issues, and we have gone through many, many volunteers with at least 1 or 2 different committees because of different situations. And I just think that those people, from the majority of the volunteers, if there was an avenue to, say, hey, I'm uncomfortable with this, but knowing that it's not going to that committee chair would be more apt to say something.
So I'm hearing 2 things here. One is I think maybe Angela Taylor and I can review our formal complaint process in the policies to ensure we have something in place and we can update it, and maybe include what you were saying, Michael, about kind of chain of command as to how to address issues. And the second thing I'm hearing is the intent of the original survey going out was more broad so that it wouldn't identify any committees, but maybe in that survey, we can again highlight that it's anonymous, but put tick boxes to say my review pertains mostly to events committee, and kind of list the different pockets that we have, so that the feedback will be streamlined more into specifics. So then we can tell if it's more specific committee related or more general related, or we can maybe look at the survey to see how we can maybe funnel it down a little bit so that it gives us a little more area to hone in on, as opposed to just the sweeping area.
Right. I agree with that. And to be clear, I think the intent that the survey was always going to be done, reviewed through the governance committee is there. When I was saying about going to the committee member, I was talking about like immediate complaints. So like Cindy was saying, you'd have 2 processes. if you have one where it's like an immediate complaint, something that needs to be addressed right away, and it's within a specific committee and it's not dealing directly with that board member who runs the committee chair, then that would be the appropriate person to go to because they can deal with it. Obviously, I think we would have a couple different levels to deal with things where people can escalate as they need to, but and the ultimate being the integrity commissioner. But yeah, does that make sense, Angela? Or does that you still would have some concerns with that? Or?
No, I think that's a good way of starting.
Yeah, because we don't want to lose a bunch of volunteers that have, you know, committed their time because they're not being treated fairly. I don't think we're always going to have. There's always going to be a conflict of interest and people butting heads, and personalities are never going to work out completely. But if it's a pattern and all of a sudden people are just not being treated fairly, that's something that we should hopefully work on and fix to retain volunteers. I agree with that. All right, so that's good for the staff survey, I believe, staff volunteer survey. Any other comments on that one? Go ahead, Cindy.
We are also looking at the ED 360 performance evaluation. We're recommending that it be done twice a year. We're just in the process of looking at very standardized measures to do that right now. So that's in progress. The other item we have to bring forward is an exit survey for staff, students, and volunteers. So that's just if people decide to leave or move on, we can get some information about their experience. The preamble reads, thank you for the time you spent with the Downtown BIA. We would appreciate your feedback and suggestions for improvements so that we can continue to improve our workplace and the services we provide to our members. Your comments and input will remain anonymous and will be received by the BIA Governance Committee for review. We wish you all the best in your future endeavors. So that's just a series of questions about their experience. Especially like now that we have summer students moving on and whatnot, it gives a nice opportunity. I mean, and it's hard because the responses are anonymous, but if we only have one person moving on, but I mean, it goes to governance, so it can be filtered through there as well.
The comment I had on that was question 10, the final exit question was, would you recommend this company to a friend? Just change company to BIA. Yeah.
Perfect. Good catch, thank you.
No problem.
So that was the exit survey. We also, there's a draft document for an ED exit interview. So it's mostly a series of questions we could potentially ask the ED depending on the rationale for their departure. It might not be appropriate in some circumstances, but if we do have an ED who transitions to another position and it's amicable, it might be good to get their feedback. And there were a series of exit interview questions that we can bring forward for governance review at a later date. We're still fine tuning that piece. So we drafted, so now we're gonna look at external communications quickly. Sorry, I'm looking at the clock and being sensitive to time. So we do have the new board email account so that general inquiries go to the board. We drafted a response to that, which would read, thank you for contacting the Downtown Oshawa Business Improvement Area. Your email is important to us and it's automatically forwarded to each member of the Board of Directors. As a volunteer board, we will do our best to provide a collective response in a timely manner. Thank you once again for connecting with us. So we just thought it was a nice way to acknowledge the email and didn't lock us into a time-bound response. Is there any feedback on that kind of generic reply to? And I don't think we've had anybody email us yet, right, Angela? I don't think.
I wouldn't know because I don't get them.
Yeah.
So I believe not. The automatic response hasn't been set up yet because Cindy hasn't sent that to me. And our IT guy has to, he has to set it up because it's set up as a group, not however we set it up. Anyways, and he's been ill. Like quite ill. So hopefully he's on the mend and hopefully within the next week or two, we can get that set up. But yeah, the emails themselves right now is set up. So if someone sends a message to board@downtownoshawa.ca, it goes to each board member. There's just no automatic response right now. And then I believe that there was going to be some discussion around who is going to reply, so that it's like one person replying or whatever. But I think that Cindy's going to explain all of that, because I know that was part of our discussion. I'll let Cindy have it back.
Oh, yeah. Well, it was part of our discussion, which I don't think we landed on anything. We flagged it as a potential issue. And it's so hard because we can policy everything to death, but it would just be, I think, pertinent to have a discussion with the board as to how best to move forward. If we all receive an inquiry, just because it comes in at 12:30 a.m. and I'm still awake, does that mean I have the freedom and liberty to respond because I have an opinion on that question? Or do we bring the question to the board if it's controversial or sensitive or specific, like exactly how we answer as a collective so that we're on the same page? And should the answer come directly from the chair each time? Not necessarily stating the chair has to respond, but if an email were drafted by somebody, it could come through the chair's email. Like, we weren't really sure the best way forward to respond to such inquiries. And again, I think it crosses over. I know we were reviewing our social media policies and stuff, because it ties into who has the liberty to say what as a board member on social media. If I have an opinion that may or may not be representative of the board's opinion, do I reply to social media? And I see the same thing happening with these emails. If somebody specifically says something about, I don't know, welcoming streets, and if I'm representative of that program on the board, do I just take the liberty of responding? So it's a little bit tricky that we've gone down this path, and I don't know the best way to have a clear direction that everybody is on the same page and agreeable to.
I think my view on that would be the chair always respond, because the chair is the voice of the board to the public. And if there's any of the inquiries that are specifically relating to a certain committee, that the chair be obligated to discuss it with that committee chair first. The committee, he could delegate to the committee chair to write a draft response, and then the chair and the committee member would be able to send that out. So I think if it's non-committee specific, the chair would send the reply, speaking on behalf of the board. Committee specific would be an obligation of the chair to liaise with the committee chair to draft the appropriate response, and then the chair sends it out. But yeah, I would say that I don't think I want every board member to touch in or have a say on every email that comes into us. It's really just it's a time suck, and I don't think it's necessary realistically. So.
Yeah, and actually I think in my head I was bracing for hundreds of emails from angry BIA members, and since we haven't received one to date, maybe that is a fair expectation to kind of put that on the chair. Yeah, so I'm cool with bringing that forward.
Yeah, the other concern is like we can't discuss things outside of a board meeting. So there can't be like email chains with all the board members talking about key issues. It's against the rules, because that's board meetings held not in the public forum. So we're not allowed to do that.
That's why you're chair of governance, Michael.
I can lay the hammer down. Yeah, I mean, I can advise us to the rules. I don't know, I voiced this concern in the past, and we'll continue to give friendly reminders to the board about that. But yeah, that's kind of it makes things more difficult, because if you can have an email thread between all the board members to say, here's the thing, what do you guys want to respond? How do you want to say this? You want to do that? Can't do it. Yeah, up to 2 board members, 3 board members in one conversation is okay. Anything more than that's a board meeting, and it has to be done in public.
So did you want to give Ivano a heads up on that one?
I will remind him of this. He, he likes to get things done. So.
Okay, perfect. So that's actually an easy fix. So thank you for those insights. So I think, yeah, that's all for governance right now for communications that we wanted to bring forward to discuss at the board tomorrow. We have, yeah, there's some things we're still working on and developing, but those were the primary things for tomorrow, I think, to get going.
So then I would motion that we accept all recommendations of the communications plan, and to specifically list them out. One being that the board evaluation survey be brought to the board for their approval and adoption. That the feedback for staff volunteers survey be sent out quarterly and sent to, and then the staff student volunteer exit survey be sent out on exit of any staff, students, and volunteers, with all survey results to be vetted through the governance committee. And then finally, that the draft as set out in the communications plan for the automatic reply to board emails be approved and implemented when possible, given the circumstances of the IT person being ill. That was a lot, Angela. I'm sorry.
That's okay. I can go back and listen to the recording.
Ah, very good. All right. So that's my motion. Can I get a seconder on that?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Caitlin. And Cindy? Yes or no?
What do you need me for? Yeah. Yes, yes. Thank you.
It's carried. The other thing I think we need to motion is a motion that Caitlin review if the board is to adopt the monthly board survey, that Caitlin review the results and report back to the board, to the governance committee with a summary of those results. Cindy, will you second that for me?
Yes, I will.
Caitlin, do you agree?
I agree with this.
Excellent, carried. Okay, so I hope you guys can give us another short amount of time. I do really want Taylor to speak to the last item on the agenda. Is that okay? Do you have another little bit of time you can give us to us? If you have to drop out, I understand. We're gonna stick around for a little bit though, because I do want to hear about the capstone projects, what's going on, and also set a focus for the governance committee for next meeting and what we need to do with that. So that's all right. Go ahead, Taylor.
So I actually only really dealt with the social media capstone group. Some of the other ones were the HR and the policy groups. So Angela and Roger can definitely speak more to that. If you're interested in listening to the social media stuff, I can definitely tell you, but that was more relevant to the marketing committee.
Okay, go ahead. Social media, what's up?
So they were working on a plan for us, helping us identify the obviously different target markets, kind of like Cindy was talking about external and internal communications, and how we can kind of talk to the members. They're kind of like a facet of the internal communications, I guess, because they are members of the BIA. And then external would be your tourists, your students, that kind of stuff. So they were working on communications calendars, times of the year where different pieces can go out, and then of course the different types of communications that each group wants to see and needs to see, and then how we can do that and interact with them online. One of our ideas is to have a private Facebook group for the members. I know it's been done in the past and failed a little bit, so one of the things that we were investigating, and I'm actually still looking into a little bit more, is how we can facilitate that and keep it going, and keep it positive, but also have it, I guess, open, and having them feel like they can come to us and with their complaints or concerns online without it getting out of hand and going into the public too much, like the current Downtown Oshawa group is. So that's kind of like the highlight for that group.
Okay.
I'm sure Angela or Roger can talk more about the policy stuff. There were quite a few.
So any comments on the social media piece there? Hearing none. Thank you very much, Taylor. That is helpful, and I look forward to that, specifically that downtown Oshawa group. It's interesting. So it would be nice to have some responses from the BIA as a collective on some of the comments that you see on that page. So that would be good. Angela, maybe you could just speak a little bit more generally and remind us of the capstone students and what that is and what they're working on. I know that I've received several documents from you, and I would like to direct the board to review those and have you send all the documents to the board, to the governance committee, so that we can review them and have some comments before adopting them formally. So.
Before I start that, the one thing that Taylor forgot to mention, and it isn't really related, kind of related to this capstone, but not really. Taylor just finished updating our social media policy and guidelines because they were really old. And she just finished them. And I think that's something that should be brought to the governance committee next time. Like literally she finished them yesterday and I had a chance to quickly review them. So I hadn't even had a chance to send them to you, Michael.
Yeah, I was going to say, if somebody wants to review those, I'd be more than happy to send them along. It's like a policy and best practices guideline. And actually, Cindy, that kind of answers a little bit of your question regarding what the board can say on social media and how they can respond on there. We addressed a bit of that. So.
Okay, so for the capstone, the capstone students are from Ontario Tech. They're all business students, and it's part of their course. We were very, very lucky. We submitted 5 proposals and got all 5. I was totally shocked because when I was talking with the professor, there were other companies that submitted stuff and didn't get any students taking them up. Yes, we were very popular this year. So with that, we had the social media group. We had a group working on our surveys, our resident and business surveys, which are coming in. And right now, well, today we have a meeting with that group to get some preliminary results. We had another group working on risk management, and that's mainly for around events because our events department really didn't have anything formal. The closest thing that we had for risk management was a rain-out policy for some of our events. So this is actually identifying quite a few other areas. Then we had another group look at our current policies and procedures and sort of compare them to the cities, but other organizations as well. And just provide some insight or make some suggest some changes. Not drastic changes, just some minor changes, but just so that we're all sort of in line with other organizations very similar to us. And then the final group revamped our volunteer manual, although I think it's called a volunteer policy, and accessibility policy, which we didn't have. And so those are well, I think I sent you, Michael, the volunteer one, the accessibility and the risk management, which some of them, I've had one of our summer students go through already before you've even seen it and pare it down because there was a lot of redundancy. So we've removed a lot of that. And, it's really up to this committee with some of it. Some of the things I question because as I was reading some of it, like the volunteer one, it sounded a lot more like a paper than an actual policy. So there's things like that we'll need to adjust, but all the background and legwork has been done for us.
And how long do we have the capstone students for?
They're done.
They're done now. Okay.
They're doing their presentations this week. So now that doesn't mean that we can't apply for more capstones students. Generally in the fall, if we get a capstone group, it's basically 8 months. Well, 6 because you have to September to December, and then you have January to March. So if there is something that we want, definitely I can put an application in for. In this case, with the whole COVID situation, they knew that they were going to have more students trying to take courses online and stuff. And they had way more summer capstone students than they normally do. So they really encouraged us to provide more than one project.
Okay, great. So I would suggest then that we, Angela, if you could send Caitlin and Cindy a copy of let's start with the volunteer policies and procedures. So we'll do that one for next next governance meeting. So if everyone could have a review on that, come with your comments ready, come with your revisions ready, and next meeting we will go through that 25-page document and see what we can do to crisp it up a little bit, or see what changes need to be made, if any. And hopefully at the end of it, we'll be able to have a document we're happy with and adopt it formally, or bring it to the board for adoption, I should say. So that would be my suggestion for next meeting. Is everyone okay with that? Great, lots of big smiles there. And that's any new business. So that would
Actually, Michael, sorry. Can I also suggest maybe we look at the accessibility one as well, or try to, just because we do have the URAD project, which is ramp access downtown. And we are working with members of the accessibility committee to get that project underway.
Well, that's fine, because I don't think we have too many volunteers working right now. So why don't we scratch the volunteer review and go with the accessibility standards review? I think it's hard to go through two documents in one meeting, and also just to be mindful and want to make sure nobody rushes through this, but is able to spend some time on it. So I don't want to do two in one. So, all right, we'll scratch the volunteer. Angela will send you guys a copy of the accessibility standards. And next meeting, we'll go through that and take your comments. So thank you for that, Angela. Can I get a motion to approve the recommendations regarding the capstone projects update?
I can agree with that.
Oh.
2 in 1, perfect. We'll go with Caitlin and then carried with Cindy approving. Thank you. Any new business to discuss? I think we've touched on everything. Angela, Taylor, do you have anything you'd like to bring to the governance committee's attention?
Nope, not at the moment.
Oh, not me either. Thanks.
Perfect. All right. Well, that brings us to an adjournment. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
Motion that.
Thank you. Cindy, do you approve?
I do. Thank you. It was a great
Excellent.
meeting. Thank you.
Thanks very much, everybody, for coming. That was great. We will meet again next month. We've got our marching orders for what we need to do, and feel free to send over any recommendations for what we need to discuss at the next meeting. Otherwise, right now, we're at the review of the accessibility standards, and I'm sure some other things will pop up as the next board meeting that we'll need to address as well. So looking forward to that, and have a good day, everyone. See ya.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.